I am.
Okay, good. We have a seat for you. In honor of you, we're going to put the phone right in front of your seat. Okay, so any questions in the room? Guys, come on. Okay. I have my two go-to right here.
Okay. This is Ed Stanton again. I wanted to ask Barrett. And Barrett, don't you think that refuge managers ought to have a pre-position, pre-approval, in situ burn without having to go through the do-loop, particularly in Region 6 of getting RRT concurrence?
Yeah, I don't think we minded going through the hoops because Fish and Wildlife Service standpoint, Steve Spencer's always got our back, you know. So Steve and Mike made it pretty easy, Mike Sams.
No, they're very good, but those people will change.
Right. We wouldn't buck it for sure. We love burning stuff, man.
Sometimes good,
I mean, you
sometimes
saw the
bad.
slides, it's cool.
Well, that was Department of Interior.
Right.
Any other questions? Okay, there's one over here. Oh, and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Amanda Mayo. I am the State Environmental Officer for the Air National Guard Base that's located in Gulfport, Mississippi. I was curious, Barrett, you mentioned that there was air monitoring, and I was just wondering if you could expand on what you guys were actually monitoring for, and what kind of like long-term air impacts the burning potentially had.
So I don't want to make up any stories. I'm not an air quality expert. So whatever, Ed, you may be able to answer this. Whatever monitoring systems that Gulf Strike Team came in and supplied, we were looking at particulate matter in the air. We had 4 or 5 different stations set up around the burn, even as far up as Venice, looking at just, I guess, general air quality metrics. And I think I stated in the presentation, the reason it was the perfect scenario is because we were so remote. So we had the perfect wind. We had kind of a easterly wind, which is mostly a southeast wind at that time of year, but we had kind of a more easterly component, blowing it out across the river, out into the Gulf of Mexico in the West Bay. So we didn't see any adverse effects at all because of the situation we were in. If it would have been a due south wind, we would have been blowing into a little more heavily populated area.
Other questions? Okay, there's another one over here.
Caitlin Slife again. So you mentioned, Bree, you mentioned that some of the techniques used might have just turned under some of that oil back down into the sediment. I was wondering if sequestering that oil down in the sediment would actually remove it from the system and make it less of an issue over a long period of time, or and it would just generally degrade. It would take a long time, but it would generally degrade and just be removed from the system. So is that a viable thought to do?
So my work personally isn't really focused on the long-term kind of food web impacts of oil, if that's what you're talking about, the toxicity availability to the rest of the ecosystem. But as has been mentioned, the oil that's still out there this long after it, especially after it's had that initial weathering coming ashore, it doesn't have a lot of the more toxic compounds in it. And the plant wasn't negatively affected by it from the data that we presented. Spartina that we transplanted established, and that means that the root system is there, it's keeping the marsh intact, there's a microbial community that's there and is still active. So I would be less concerned about that being there. But the amounts that were being mixed in, they weren't as high. You saw that thick mousse layer. The remediation treatments removed that top tar coat and actually scraped that mousse layer out a lot. So while there's some residual oil that was mixed in, it's dramatically reduced compared to what it was before.
Okay, one last question? Oh, do you want to add something?
I want to add something. Hi, this is Brian Roberts from Lone County again. Well, a lot of the evidence from this spill may not yet suggest that there are as much long-term concerns about that oil that gets buried in the sediments. We have had a lot of oil studies that have been done over the years. And if you look at the West Falmouth oil spill that happened in the 70s, they have seen sustained impacts from that study that have persisted for over 30 years, with that oil layers in the sediments having impacts on the community. Some of those are on the plants, some of it on some of the burrowing organisms, where they essentially only burrow down to where the depth of the oil is. So we may not yet know what the impacts are in the long term for that buried oil in this study, and also not all systems behave the same. So I agree, it doesn't appear at this point that we're seeing really long-term impacts from the oil once it gets buried, but don't close the book on that yet. We just might not know.
That's a great point, and I reiterate that the data that we showed on crabs and snails showed that there was nowhere near full recovery compared to the reference conditions.
Okay, great. Unless there's any other burning questions, I might call it there. Okay, so let's give a round of applause to our presenters. Jackie couldn't be here in person, but if you come on November 13th, she'll be here. Okay, so I'm going to hand things over. Well, actually, before I hand things over to Monica, actually, Monica, do you want to put your slide on? So the folks online, we are going to be signing off. So my stress level will go down significantly. I'm just kidding. But so Tara is going to put a survey link in the chat box. We would really appreciate if you guys just took a couple of minutes to fill out that survey, and we'll also follow up with the recording. We'll send you guys an email in case you know other people that might have wanted to tune in, or you guys missed some presentations. But we just want to say thank you for signing on, and yeah, hope you guys have a good afternoon. So we're gonna hang up now. Bye, everybody. Okay, hi guys. We don't have to worry about this anymore. Yeah, you know. Okay, so I'm gonna turn it over. Oh, we're sharing your screen, so let me just